Good morning and welcome to Blind Strike Exotics. Today we are going to set up the 4x2 enclosure for my Brazilian rainbow boa, which you see back there. I'm going to go through some of the products, or most of the products that you should have when building an enclosure, and I'm going to show you how to install the heat panel, and I'm going to show you how to place the probe in there as well to make sure that you're getting the correct heat in the hotspot. Alright, the first item we have here is the radiant heat panel from Pro Products. I chose to go with this brand over the other ones due to the fact that they have a 10-year warranty, but they're also supposed to not have any combustible materials that can cause a fire. It's also made out of non-toxic materials. So give Pro Products a try. I believe the guy I spoke to is Bob. He will help figure out exactly what size you need for your enclosure, depending on what species of animal that you have in there, what your ambient temperatures are in the room, you know, whether your room's in the basement or upstairs, and how hot the hotspot needs to get. So he was very thorough, he was very helpful. So check out Pro Products Radiant Heat Panels. And to go along with the Radiant Heat Panel, you are going to need a thermostat. This guy here, just bought off of Amazon. It's called an iPower. You plug your heat panel directly into there, and the thermostat probe has a suction cup. Let's see, there we go, on it. But you can also, what I'm going to end up doing is actually drilling a hole through the back of the 4x2 and affixing it directly over top of where the hot spot is going to go. You are also going to need a couple of hides. That is, I believe, a jumbo size hide, which pretty much takes up almost 25% of the enclosure. That would be a pretty good size, especially once the Brazilian rainbow boa gets to full size. You'll need a big water bowl. I just have these little crock dishes from Walmart. I opted to go with the LED panel inside of the 4x2 as well, so this is a power supply. I have some magnolia leaves, and I honestly don't remember what type of leaves these were. I bought them from Josh's Frogs, and we'll use that as leaf litter in the bottom. I'm going to be using a combination of cocoa husk. This is Pro Cocoa, but you can use Reptile Chip or any other brand like that. I'm also going to combine that with coconut fiber, which is the stuff that's really ground up. It kind of looks like soil. And I also have sphagnum moss, which will help retain a little more humidity. Since the first thing you're going to want to do is clean out the enclosure. What I use is F10. It's like a veterinary grade cleaner. I use it to clean out everything. It's a concentrated mix that you just mix in with water by volume. So we'll just spray it out. Spray the glass with it too. And then we will just clean off, dry off all the surfaces. Now when you're using F10 to clean your tubs and other enclosures, you really kind of want to let it sit for a couple minutes, just so it has a chance to do what it needs to do. But right now I'm really doing this more to kind of clean everything off from the shipping and manufacturing process and the dust that's in there. Dust! I don't know if anybody's seen Little Britain. It's a sketch comedy show from a comedy duo in Britain. It's kind of funny, but they had a skit where they always talked about eating dust. Alright. The next step is going to be to mount your radiant heat panel inside of the enclosure. I have a light bar installed from Reptile Basics inside the enclosure, which probably sits here, which I wish it was either up in the front or a little further back. because you can't mount the heat panel as far back as I'd like to, like kind of in the middle. So it's going to be pushed a little more towards the front in this build. And there's two ways to do it. You can either put the heat panel where you want underneath inside of here and mark the holes where they need to go. The issue with that is if you flip this whole thing upside down, the door is going to be kind of, you either have to prop it open or it's going to keep trying to close on you. So what I opted to do is figured out exactly where I wanted it just from the top side, and I marked some pilot holes here, and so I'm just going to drill straight down through the top. There we go. Alright, well, those holes should be big enough. And with the heat panels, there are two sides to it. There's the like kind of the smooth side, and then there's the other side which is textured, and the textured side is actually going to go face down into the enclosure, so just make sure you put that side down. Alright, so a little trial and error. Originally I thought you would drop the bolt down through the top and affix the nut on the underside, but it doesn't look like the bolts are long enough, so it kind of looks like what you're supposed to do, at least this is what I figured out, is you're actually supposed to put this bolt up through the bottom, and it actually goes through the bottom part of the radiant heat panel all the way kind of up top towards the top a little bit. So it actually goes through the actual frame of the heat panel, and then you affix the bolt up top. Let me see if I can get the other one. Yeah, it's coming off the top. Alrighty. There we go. Now, depending on where your space is, you may also need to maybe saw off the top of these bolts if they don't fit where you're going. You definitely couldn't probably stack these with these bolts, or you just have to get the more appropriately sized bolts. The heat panel power cord does not come with a plug on the end of it. It has these little guys here that you just take apart and clip on to the end so that you can drill a hole through the back of the enclosure and not need that hole to be any bigger than it needs to be. So let's drill that hole in the back now, and then we'll affix the plug. I actually do not need to drill a hole. This cable actually feeds right through the air vent perfectly. So I will just pull all that slack through there. And that works out nice because I don't like to make holes in these any more than I need to. Now, I wasn't aware of these clip-on plugs that came with this. I did speak to the owner of Pro Products, and he said you can clip them and unclip them as many times as you need. Hopefully, you really don't have to do it more than a couple times, if only once, for the lifetime of the heat panel. Alright, now to clip the plug onto the wire, this just pops open like this, and you, I believe, just slide the cable all the way up through there, and then close it. Alright, and there is the finished plug. The next step would be to put your thermostat probe. You might have to drill a hole, but luckily the thermostat that I use, the probe fits right through the back here without any trouble. So when you the placement of this is going to go directly on top of the hot spot. Alright, so we have installed the radiant heat panel and we've put the thermostat probe inside the enclosure as well. So the next thing to do is to start decorating. Alright, so I have made the hide on the hot side of the enclosure, and I just need to make sure that I attach the thermostat probe securely to there so it doesn't fall off when she is moving around inside of the cage. I typically use this HVAC tape. It's the shiny metal looking tape. I really use it for everything with reptile keeping. It seems to work pretty well. It holds tight. It's not affected by the heat. So I think the best thing to do maybe to bring a little bit of slack so she can't get around it, and then tape it up the back as well so it stays up against the back of the aquarium. And you could hide that easily if you wanted to as well, so that it's not kind of shiny metal tape sticking out like a sore thumb. But this way she will not be able to move it. It'll keep the thermostat in place. And it's out of the way. Alrighty. My next step is going to be to mix up the substrate. So we have the coconut husk, which is a little thicker, little chunks of ground up coconut. There you go. So that's going to go in there. And coconut husk, coconut fibers, and whatever other coconut products you have holds humidity extremely well. And for Brazilian rainbow boas, that is a huge plus. Let's get some of that in there. That should be enough because we're also going to mix in some sphagnum moss and some of the coconut fiber as well. And these enclosures aren't extremely deep, maybe inch and a half from the lip right here down into the enclosure, so you can't really put too much substrate. Get some of that in there, we'll break it up. Alright. Let's break this up. Smaller pieces. You want to make sure that when you're buying any of these substrate products that they're all animal safe, animal friendly. Usually if you buy them from places like Josh's Frogs, the reptile supply places, they're all going to be safe. If you are to buy them on Amazon or a place like that, you just have to make sure that they're actually, no pesticides or any chemicals in them and they're all natural. And if you're going to be making this aquarium, it's also kind of nice to have a bioactive setup. I made a little tub here. If it's too close or not. So I have my coconut fiber in here. I also have some live moss. And I put springtails and isopods in here a couple weeks ago to kind of let them grow up a little bit. And the springtails and isopods help. They're kind of like cleaners. They help keep everything clean inside the aquarium. So I'm going to put this coconut fiber with the bioactive little bugs in both the Brazilian rainbow boa enclosure and the Loma python enclosure. And that'll just help keep things clean and break stuff down. It's not going to, if they defecate in there and have a real big bowel movement, it's not going to keep that from breaking down. But if you can see, I had an isopod on my hand, I don't know where it went. But they, the isopods and the springtails, as long as you give them food, which in this case is going to be stuff left behind when the rainbow boa does its business, they should multiply and stay in there for you keep everything nice and clean. So you just want to mix all that up with the moss, with the Reptile chips. And spread it around, see how much we have. You can always add more if I definitely need more. Put some more Reptile chip in there. You want to mix the Reptile chip ahead of time and let it dry out, because you do have to put a decent amount of water in it to get it to expand and break up. And you don't want it to be soaking wet, because it's not good for your snake. But you let it dry out a little bit ahead of time. Let's get some more of the soil in here with the buggies. I'm gonna try to keep this moss intact so it doesn't get buried. Let's mix up again. I think it should be enough, because again, we don't want to get it too high, because there's not a ton of room for real deep substrate in here. And I think, let's just throw it back there. Get some under the hot hide over here. I don't want it to be too thick. There. I think that should be enough for now. I'm going to take some of the moss that I have and set it maybe in the back here. Gives it a little greenery, nice, and get it down in there nice and deep, so it kind of hopefully tries to root back there. Adds a little bit of green. I'm gonna use this stuff too. Maybe put it up here in the front corner. You can't see it, but I'll show it to you later. I think I need a little more coconut fiber up here. Alright, here we go. Alright, that looks good so far. What I'm going to do next is put the humid cold hide in, which is this big jumbo hide, which is going to take up pretty much this whole side of the enclosure. I'm going to get it down in there so it's kind of anchored in. And so that'll give them, the boa, a huge hide on the one side, and she can either get up on top of it up here on top, or she can go inside of it. She really likes her little humid hide I have now in her other enclosure, so I'm assuming that she's probably going to spend a lot of time in there going forward. The water bowl, running out of space pretty quick. I guess I'll probably put it right here, right in the front. You know what? Maybe I'll move the moss up front so that way you can see it. And I will put the water bowl right back there. There we go. Cool. Alright, that works. So there's the water bowl. Try to clean this up a little bit. Alright, so there is substrate everywhere. We have the cold side hide, we have the hot hide, we have the thermostat probe attached to the hot side. It is running up the back over there. The radiant heat panel is attached. And the nice thing about attaching the probe directly to the hot hide is, you know, for rainbow boas, I believe their high temperature is 85. This is the spot that you want exactly to be 85 degrees. So I will set the thermostat for 85 degrees, and that's the hottest it'll get in there. Alright, so here is the finished enclosure. That is the cold hide right there. I actually had this big piece of wood that I wanted to put in there as well, so I just kind of stuck it in the back as another dimension, and it kind of helps cover up that heat, or the tape a little bit in the back, holding the probe in place. There's a water bowl in the back. you don't want it directly underneath the radiant heat panel. Here's the moss. Here's the warm side with the probe on top, and there's a little hide in there for her as well. I may add some more moss later, some in the corner, and I may try to cover up the top here. But the next step is to put the enclosure in place where I'm going to be keeping it. And then I'm going to plug everything in, make sure everything works, make sure the temperature gets up to the right spot, test it for a couple hours, make sure it's working okay, and then as soon as that's all done, I'll cut back to the video of me putting the boa in there. And I almost forgot to place the leaf litter in there, which isn't necessary, it kind of gives it another aesthetic. I believe these are magnolia leaves, and I have some other leaf litter as well I'll put in there. So this bag was running out. Kind of gives it a more natural feel. They live mainly on, rainbow boas live mainly on the ground in the forest, so naturally at the bottom of the rainforest there's going to be leaf litter everywhere. Gotta toss it in there. Let me open up the other bag, get those in there, and then we will be ready to plug everything in and get ready to put my girl in there. I can't wait to see her moving around in there. It'll be very exciting. She's been in a tub since I've had her, and I haven't really been able to see her move around a whole lot, so it's going to be really cool to see her have the opportunity to stretch out and enjoy her new space. Alright, I think I'll place a couple of these in the cold hide as well, which you won't be able to see, but those are in there. And now I think it is looking pretty close to perfect. Alright guys, it's been a couple hours. The temperature is holding steady in the boa's new enclosure, so it is time to put her in there. Let's give you a look of the enclosure and then we'll add her in there. Alright, so here it is. There is the hide. There's the moss. And there's a little water bowl in the back. I added this big log as well. It runs pretty much all the way across there and helps cover up that tape a little bit in the back. Here is the warm side hide. I'm assuming she'll probably be on top more than the basking feature there. And so that is what it looks like full view. So let's get out my rainbow boa and put her in there. Alright, there she is. And I think she is ready to go into her new home. She looks awesome in there. Her colors really pop underneath the LED light and against that green. These are just beautiful snakes. They're so cool. Trying to see her. Can't see her head. How pretty she is. Checking everything out. It looks like she's just kind of sitting there thinking to herself, what is this place? So So I'm gonna let her settle in, and I will update you guys in a couple days just to see how she's doing in there, but I'm sure she will be just fine. Thanks again for stopping by Blind Strike Exotics, and please remember to like and subscribe. Take care.